Look at that. They're tormenting us, Tom Tom. They're eating that delectable Panda Express Beijing beef right in front of us while we're stuck here with this bamboo.
Introducing Panda's new Beijing Beef. Crispy strips of marinated beef with a tangy sweet and spicy sauce.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Woo Can Cook. My name is Wesley and this is a show where we are slowly cooking our way through all of the food from my childhood. Today we're getting to part 4 of our Panda Express series and checking out their Beijing beef. For those following along, we've been making our way through their entree dishes with their General Tso's chicken, honey sesame chicken, and kung pao chicken in the last few episodes as well. Panda Express's Beijing beef looks very similar to their tangy deep fried orange chicken recipe, but uses sirloin steak in lieu of chicken breast. We'll be doing a tempura batter for our super crunchy hack to the Panda Express version here, as well as a skirt steak approach for my own version as well. So let's get into it. I'm starting off by setting up our base layer of umami with some crushed and minced garlic, followed by some finely minced ginger. Next, I'm deseeding and then large dicing some red bell pepper here, followed by half of a sweet white onion. Then I'm setting all of this aside and we're moving on to our beef. For our beef, I'm setting up a tempura batter here by separating 2 egg whites from their yolks. Now, a proper egg white station actually requires 3 bowls here, not 2. Go ahead and refer to the Westlake soup recipe here for a proper egg white station, but as you can plainly see, if you aren't careful without 3 bowls, this can happen. Moving right along though, we're whisking our egg whites up, then adding a 1/4 cup each of AP flour, cornstarch, and water. Then we're whisking all of this up until a smooth batter forms, then we're moving on to our beef. So for our beef, I'm going with an Angus sirloin steak here. I also discovered that Angus steak doesn't play super well in the freezer, which is why our steaks are an odd color here. It should be okay since we're just gonna deep fry this stuff anyway, but definitely don't freeze your New York strips and ribeyes for your cast iron pan fried steaks though. I'm slicing these up into 1/4 inch pieces. I'm going pretty small here since it's going to be a little bit more chewy than our more typical chicken thigh or breast. Then I'm giving each piece a wash in our tempura batter and setting it aside while we assemble our sauce. I'm starting with 4 tablespoons of soy sauce as our base layer, then 2 tablespoons each of oyster sauce for some fishy fermentation, hoisin sauce for some sweetness, and rice vinegar for some acidity. Then I'm using 4 tablespoons of sweet chili sauce plus a 1/4 cup of honey for our iconic sweet and tangy Panda Express brightness, and then rounding it all out with a 1/4 cup of water and a pinch of kosher salt. Over in a separate bowl, I'm stirring up equal parts cornstarch and water for a cornstarch slurry, and we're ready to fry. Over on the stove, I have 12 ounces of vegetable oil heating up in my wok to 350 degrees F. Then I'm adding my tempura battered beef to the oil about 12 pieces at a time. Be careful not to overload your wok here, as you'll find that the temperature of your oil will rapidly drop when overfilled. I'm frying these in batches until golden brown, then removing my oil, wiping down my wok, adding back about 4 tablespoons of oil, and giving my wok a good long yao for a nice non-stick surface. Once our oil is ripping hot, I'm adding my garlic and ginger to the oil first until fragrant for about 10 to 15 seconds. Then I'm following this with my bell pepper and onions for a quick flash fry for about 1 to 2 minutes. We're going pretty brief here with our veggies because we want them to retain that signature crunch of flash cooked wok fried veggies. Now I added a pinch of kosher salt here to help our onions release some moisture, but I actually regretted doing this because it ultimately is going to work against us for the crunchy quality of our veggies, so maybe don't do that. Then I'm adding my beef back to the wok, followed by my sauce and cornstarch slurry. We're giving this all a toss for about 2 to 3 minutes until a thick sauce forms, and then removing and finishing with red chili flake. Now this dish is about as far removed from authentic Chinese cooking as possible, I think partly because I have never seen deep fried beef before outside of American Chinese food, but also because it's a lot sweeter than most authentic Chinese dishes. That said though, this Beijing beef is truly one of the most delicious things I think that I have ever created. The richness of our beef plus the super crunchy tempura batter absolutely works well together despite my initial doubts. Then I think the sweet chili sauce and honey really just drives the whole thing home and nails that iconic Panda Express sweet and tangy flavor right on the head. I'm not saying that I ate all of this by myself, but I ate all of this by myself and I don't regret it. Moving on to our Woo Can Cook version, I decided to take a shot at a version that omits our deep fry here. I'm taking a few cues from our kung pao chicken recipe, which you can find here, and employing the use of some dried Tianjin peppers in lieu of our red pepper flake, as well as some skirt steak in lieu of Angus sirloin. As always, I'm starting with some crushed and minced garlic, followed by some finely minced ginger. For our veggies, I'm using some yellow bell pepper here instead of red, which I think is going to be a little bit brighter in flavor as well as presentation. Then I'm dicing up a sweet onion here again, followed by some green onions. We're separating our whites and greens here. We want our whites in larger slices since they'll be going into the wok with our aromatics, then cutting our greens on a bias with a back slice, which we'll reserve as a finishing garnish. For our skirt steak, you'll find that this stuff is frequently a bit uneven in shape and size, so the first thing that we want to do is arrange our steak by size. This sorting is going to help us cut our steak into consistently sized shapes. This is going to be particularly important here since skirt steak is pretty chewy. We're going for pretty small bites here again, about 1/4 inch a piece, and then moving on to our marinade. I'm keeping it pretty simple here. This is 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of Shaoxing wine or plain old cooking sherry, then a teaspoon each of white pepper and cornstarch. We're tossing this until combined and setting it aside to marinate for 20 minutes or up to 2 hours. Over in a separate bowl, we're assembling our sauce with a little bit more umami and fermented elements than our panda version. This is 4 tablespoons of soy sauce to start, followed by 2 tablespoons each of toasted sesame oil, rice vinegar, and oyster sauce. Then for our big umami boost, I'm going with 2 tablespoons of doubanjiang, which is a Chinese fermented chili paste. Then I'm rounding all of this out with 1/4 cup each of beef stock, sweet chili sauce, and honey, plus a pinch of kosher salt. In a separate bowl, I'm assembling a cornstarch slurry again, and we're ready to fry. Over on the stove, I have my wok heating up again as hot as possible, then adding 4 tablespoons of vegetable oil and giving it a swirl for my long yao. Then what you want to do is add your beef very carefully. Don't just drop this stuff in like that, because you actually want to hold back that liquid from your marinade, both to reduce moisture in your wok, but also to avoid violent sputtering and oil burns, Wesley. We're giving this a toss for 2 to 3 minutes until a solid sear and color picks up on our steak, then we're removing it from our wok. As you can see, there's quite a bit of residual moisture in the wok here from our marinade. It should still be okay, although I do think we could have gotten more of a sear if there wasn't so much liquid in the wok. If you do forget, like me, just be sure to drain off some of this liquid before adding your beef back. Then I'm wiping down my wok, long yao one more time, and we're moving on to our veggies. Starting off with our aromatics, I'm adding my garlic, ginger, and the whites of my green onions, then sauteing until fragrant. Then I'm adding my dried Tianjin peppers here pretty early in our cook. We want this stuff to make as much contact with the hot oil as possible, because this is going to bloom out a lot of its flavor and spiciness. Then we're giving this a toss for a full minute. Remember to throw open your windows at this point, because those peppers are definitely going to give off some smoke. Then I'm adding my bell peppers and onions, giving this all a toss for about 2 minutes, then adding back my beef, followed by my sauce and cornstarch slurry. We're letting this go for about 2 minutes until a thick sauce forms, then finally removing and finishing with the greens of our green onions. This version of Beijing beef was super tasty, and I definitely had some fun experimenting with skirt steak. That said though, it's obviously going to be pretty tough to compete with a tempura fried steak, so if I'm being honest, I did actually prefer our Panda Express version here. I did think that the skirt steak here was still super tasty and complex in flavor. Omitting the extra deep fry step also made this recipe a tad bit easier to tackle and a lot less labor intensive too, so if you're looking for a simpler approach to Beijing beef, this is a good one to take on. I also thought our Tianjin peppers plus our doubanjiang added a lot more complex spiciness to our dish that contributed a lot more than the simple red pepper flake of our Panda Express version too. Okay, so that's it everyone. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you found it informative or at the very least entertaining. Thanks so much for watching and following along as we make our way through deconstructing the Panda Express menu. If you haven't yet, definitely check out our General Tso's honey sesame and kung pao chicken attempts as well. Also, if you have any requests, feel free to drop your favorite Panda Express menu item in the comments, and I'll do my best to tackle it next. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and just, start pushing buttons and see what happens. Okay, I'll see you soon.